So we've gone from like the pit of despair in terms of lighting. It's been so dark. Now we're in hell. We're in overexposed hell. Hello, I'm Jenny Fern and welcome to my library. I'm a chaotic neutral mechanical engineer who's really into permaculture and wants to talk about books. So let's talk about books. Today I want to go over, do I read the books I haul? And I have one example of a haul in which I've read like 30-something% of those books. And then there was a haul in which I've read none of them yet. So it was a good reminder of me to keep reading what I have and what I get and be mindful of what I'm getting and if I'm reading it. Back in October, I posted a video along an enthusiastic thrift store book haul. It was filmed maybe a month or two before October. So this is from like late summer of 2023 that I hauled all of these books. And I have since read a handful of them. So I thought it'd be fun to look back at what I said about them before I read them and what I say about them now. So let's explore this together, why don't we? So I just re-listened to my introduction of this book and I don't think I was very far off. It's called Across the River and Into the Trees. So this is a novel set in post-World War II Venice, following Colonel Richard Cantwell, a World War I veteran, as he embarks on a bittersweet romance with a young Italian countess. Sounds quite interesting. And I hope I like this. There is a statement that it's like a bittersweet romance. I think I'd agree with that. There's kind of explorations of one beginning their life and one ending their life, and those worlds kind of colliding in a romance that is not meant to last. Weirdly enough, I don't think his strong suit as an author is like describing a place very well. Definitely diving into thoughts and into the way that people act and speak and the way that people can have like complexities within their own mind. I think he really captures that quite well, but an actual place outside of people's heads, I feel like I wasn't really in it, you know? Anyway, I did end up taking something from this book. And largely it was these wonderfully beautiful descriptions of various women sleeping. Was just some of the most compelling imagery to me. This man and his experience with the way that different women sleep and what it says about them and what he wants from these women. Isn't this glass just beautiful? This is from a local glass artist. One moment, I shall listen to my former self. This is The Ways of a Mud Dauber, and this is written by George D. Schaefer, a professor of physiology at Stanford University. And this is about mud daubers. This is like, honestly, one of the books that I'm most interested in of this whole collection that I have here today. This just seems really, really niche. Really, really interesting. I feel like I could really learn a lot from this obviously about mud daubers. So I say that this seems niche, interesting, that of this batch of books, I'm the most interested in this. That is The Ways of a Mud Dauber by George D. Schaefer. I just have to read his dedication because I think it'll give you a little bit of insight into the humanity of this book. To Crumplewing, who was true to the tradition of all mud daubers, she honored her creator and published his name so that he who runs may read. There's something about this book that touches me to my very core. I say I think I'll learn a lot about mud daubers, and I 100% did. I learned so much about this wasp and it was so inspiring to like the concepts of being a scientist. Okay, Pebble's trying to get into my blinds right now. Oh my god, you have to see her. Can you see her? I loved this book. This was my favorite book that I read last year. It was simple scientific research on this certain type of wasp, various different studies into like how they grow, what they do with their waste product, how they navigate. I really connected with this book in a way that I didn't know that I would, but I had an inkling that this book was going to be special. It was scientific research about an animal who may be maligned, and it seemed like it was going to be done in a loving way, clearly a very scientific way. And those things combining were just, again, just so magical. It was really a wonderful piece to read. And again, it was one of my favorite things that I read in the last year. So the next book that I have is The Gift of the Deer by Helen Hoover. A wilderness tale of a deer, his mate, their offspring, and two human friends, about Helen and Adam Hoover's experience as they start a new life of self-sufficiency, and they are coexisting with wild animals in the wilderness of Minnesota. This just sounds so pleasant and wholesome and beautiful, I hope. With illustrations from her husband, Adrian Hoover. I think for some reason in that clip I call him Adam. His name is Adrian, and I think she refers to him as Aid in the text of the book. I say that I hope that this book will be pleasant, wholesome, and beautiful. It is really wholesome. It is really wholesome. It is beautiful. But this book wrecked me. There is a reading vlog where I read this book. At the end, I am sobbing. It is a warm and loving place. It is, but it is also exposure to the natural world and the human world, both of which can be very cruel. This goes into some really beautiful conversations about kind of the responsibility of humans, and when do humans cross the line of intervention for the benefit of the wild versus intervention to the detriment of the wild. And it was very nuanced and really well done, well written. I very much enjoyed Helen Hoover's viewpoint on what she spoke on in this book. For this year, 2024, so far this has been one of the most amazing reads that I've read. I have already read several 5-star books, but this was, to me, just like somewhat a fully unexpected experience. Again, I did think that this was going to be a good book and a good experience and something that I would be interested in, but I didn't know what else in addition it was going to bring to the table. It brought so much. The next book is the Ladybird book of garden birds. And this is a very small book. Well, there's illustrations on each page of different types of birds. And then there's a little blurb on the opposite side that talks about the bird and what it is. I think this is just such a cute little reference guide. In the past, I had written a short novel where the main character is really interested in birding. And so I thought this would be a really approachable way to access information about birds, because I do have a very large, comprehensive birding guide. It just seems like this might be a more approachable way to look at birds. Previously, I state that I hope that this is an approachable book about birds, something to get started with, and it 100% was. I also mentioned that I had a character in a story that I was writing or had written who was interested in birding. And so I wanted to learn more about that world and do like a little bit of research for that story. And there was something that I took away from this book and locked into my brain for that story. And that is about the black redstart. This bird was previously somewhat scarce in Britain and was usually like on the coastlines. But then after World War II, It nested in the bombed out areas, especially in London, because it is like a rock or cliff face nesting bird. That concept really sticks with me. The ability of such a destructive man-made event actually bringing more life into a city, and this example of that, it was just so poetic in and of itself. That wasn't the most impactful book, but it was definitely useful, and it was what I expected. The next book that I have is Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth by R. Buckminster Fuller. This is another one of those books that I just couldn't pass up. Buckminster Fuller presents a visionary treatise on the state of our planet and the concept of Earth as a spaceship carrying all of humanity. He advocates for a comprehensive ecological approach to tackle global challenges and foster sustainability for future generations. This is so right up my alley. I love this. I am so excited to read it. I was wondering who's lurking behind me. I had really high hopes for this book. I thought this was going to be the perfect book for me, the most ideal way to summarize my thoughts. I really thought it was going to be my beliefs put onto a page with a little bit more to learn from. This was far different from my expectations. It is really archaic, convoluted language for a book that was written in like 1969 or something like that. Quite strange concepts. This has strange metaphors, a lot of metaphors. Overall, the concepts that are explored, I think, are up my alley, are things that I'm interested in. I found information on nearly every page that I found compelling. But this book was a little bit rough to get through. Wasn't the breeze of like-mindedness that I thought it was going to be. This was quite a challenging book for me because it had a lot going on, including the metaphors, the language, and the concepts themselves and how they were laid out. But I'm happy that I read it. Again, it was an experience that I wasn't fully expecting. The next book that I have is The Old Man and the Sea. This is a novella that tells the story of Santiago, an aging Cuban fisherman, as he engages in an epic battle with a giant marlin in the Gulf Stream. This sounds so good. Doesn't that sound wonderful? Yeah, I think that just sounds brilliant. And it's a gorgeous little thin hardcover. It looks like such a beautiful book. This was a wonderful, wonderful novella. It is a classic for a reason. This is also by Ernest Hemingway. I did a reading wrap up where I covered this book and I just ended up summarizing the entire story. And I was so into it. I had to edit it down like a fifth of what I said about it. I was gripped. I was gripped by this. It went above my expectations by far. It also has a dedication from 2003. Enjoy this book. Your Friend in Fishing, Rich. And I think that's sweet. It is a great fishing book. If you were a fisherman and you gave this book to somebody, genuinely a really good book for a fisherman to a fisherman. It blew me away. It was really, really good. The next book I have is Frankenstein. I loved Frankenstein. I think Frankenstein is such a sad, moody story, and I've kind of been wanting to reread it, so I'm happy to have this copy now. I was really excited to get a copy of this because I had read it in high school and I had enjoyed it and I didn't have a copy. I reread it after obtaining it. I had a bit of a hard time with it. Looking back, I think a lot of that had to do with like some mental overload. I had a lot going on in my mind at the time that I was reading this. So I think mostly it was kind of like washing through and over me and I wasn't really absorbing too much of it. I just had a bit of a problem reading this book. The next book that I have is The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. I am thrilled to have this. I've been wanting to read this book, really, I have. Wells takes readers on a thrilling and unsettling journey to a remote island where the enigmatic Dr. Moreau conducts bizarre and ethically questionable experiments on animals, turning them into grotesque, human-like creatures. This thought-provoking novel explores themes of morality, ethics, and the boundaries of scientific inquiry. Just sounds so good. I've never read this. I'm so excited to read this. I could convince myself to sit down and read this right now. I think I was equally as excited about this book when I was first talking about it as I am now. I had really high expectations for this book. Plot, summary, and the themes really spoke to me. The book delivered exactly what I wanted in a way that was somewhat expected and somewhat unexpected. I didn't know exactly what I was getting into, but I enjoyed every moment of it. I was really enjoying every moment of this book, and I left it with this wonderful impression of the book. Really recommend this to anybody who thinks that it sounds interesting based on the plot summary and the themes. I had a wonderful time with it based on what I thought I would think and what I do now. They're equally matched. I had really high expectations for it, and those high expectations were fully met. The next book that I have is The Hot Zone, which is about infectious, contagious diseases. This is a gripping nonfiction account of viral outbreaks and biohazard incidents, including the Ebola virus. Richard Preston delivers a riveting and informative narrative that explores the harrowing world of deadly infectious diseases and the heroic efforts to contain them. I'm not 100% sure if I will like this, but it just seemed quite interesting to me. So I thought I might as well. I am in the first, maybe third of this book. I'm not done reading it, but I'm currently reading it. So I think I'd like to talk about it a little bit. I say that I'm not 100% sure that I would like this. Oh, we have a little doggy. Do you want to look up? So oh, there she is. Oh, there she is. I understand where I'm coming from, where I say I'm not quite sure if I'm gonna like this, because something about the cover of this book feels a little dramatic, feels a little dehumanized, like a little clinical. It feels a little bit like, hey, we're gonna profit off of the deaths of people, which it kind of does. It is about the Ebola virus and its relatives. It is gruesome and there is a lot of death involved. But what has solidified it for me, to be perfectly honest, is the chapter Project Ebola. Riveting in the way it felt like I was watching an X-Files. So informative and also really human. I do have an appreciation that this author does have like that human connection, won't gloss over the aspect that real people are dying. There was actually something quite interesting. This is somebody who died. He is remembered today as a quiet, unremarkable man. No photograph was taken of him during his lifetime, and no one seems to remember what he looked like. He passed through the gates of life unnoticed by anyone except his family and a few of his coworkers. He might have made no difference except for the fact that he was a host. Something about the acknowledgement that this man was largely unremarkable, that his life, which I feel like nobody wants to admit this, but it is true for many of us, genuinely, that his life meant very little. To be able to acknowledge that really connects you with humans. I don't know, does that make sense? I feel like I'm sounding a little unhinged. Here, let's get Pebcam on. There we go. I love her. There's something about the way that he is talking about the lives of these people and their deaths that feels very informed, human observer. I'm not super deep into it. I'm only about a third of the way through, but so far I am enjoying it. It's not really something that I would tend to read. I do think I'm gonna get nightmares though, so it's scary as heck. So of the books that I got in that thrift store book haul, I have read 40% of them, excluding that one Fitzgerald book that I had previously read. I'm getting there. I'm ticking them off the list. The other video of the previous thrift store book haul, haven't read any of those books, so I really should pick one up. I've been really interested in them. I've looked at them and I've thought about picking them up, and I've been like, maybe this would be a good one to pick up, and I haven't quite done it yet. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you liked it, if you like the concept of it, if you read the books that you buy from the thrift store, if you buy books from the thrift store, what do you tend to get? I was watching my old video, and I used to do this thing where I would recommend a specific book recommendation. So I'm gonna do that for you now. I have to generate a specific book recommendation because I don't get comments of them. If you want a book recommended to you, leave in the comments a specific book recommendation request, and I will try to get to you in a future video. So I have a specific book recommendation request that is just the perfect description for a book that I've already covered in this video. I'm gonna read out what the request is, and you can guess what book I'm going to recommend that has already been covered in this video. It is a book that explores the wonders of nature and wildlife, suitable for a camping trip in a national park. What do you think it is? It is The Gift of the Deer. That is just such a wonderful way to like market this book, I think. I've already talked your ear off about the wonders of this book, so I won't go into it that much more. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you again soon.